Following some controversial behaviour over the Qatar Grand Prix race weekend, the FIA is now investigating to see if Aston Martin F1 driver Lance Stroll violated any of their rules and procedures. Starting with Stroll caught on camera shoving his performance coach, then giving a short interview filled with anger and frustration that saw him drop a F-bomb. Now, Stroll was also very outspoken about the penalties he received for abusing the track limits, then knocked him out of the points during the Grand Prix. Now, after that, he potentially struck another nerve with the FIA when he criticised having the drivers compete in extreme Qatar humidity and claiming that he was close to passing out. You can read more on this situation in Chris Maitland's Racer.com article in the video description below. The photo courtesy there of Aston Martin. There's an image of him having to get out of the car and walking up to the ambulance, isn't it, to ask for immediate assistance as well. But we've talked about it so much about Lance Stroll over the past couple of weeks, and with his meltdown in Qatar, which was more said than done, due to the increasing pressure on him, continuing to underperform. Guys, do you think the FIA will penalise him? And I want to add an additional to that. Do you think Lance Stroll's time in Aston Martin and Formula One is done?
Well, considering all of the things that went on in Qatar this weekend, I guess you can call this actions detrimental to open wheel racing, right? Because I know the FIA is not going to be really pleased with everything that went down with Lance Stroll over the weekend. I do think that his meltdown in Qatar had a lot to do with all of the pressure hanging over his head. He has to deal with all the critics and be like, you're only in F1 because your father owns the team, Lawrence Stroll, and then you have to keep hearing people say you don't deserve your seat, you're not performing up to standard. I understand that's very hard on Lance Stroll, but the fact is he has truly been underperforming in this car, hasn't been on the same level as Alonso, and this is overall it just hasn't been going well for Lance Stroll at all. This season been a really long year for this Aston Martin driver, and for him to shoving his performance coach. A lot of people don't really like to see that small turmoil within the team, and then to give that really fiery interview that didn't really last that long, end up dropping an F-bomb. Sure, that didn't make Formula One and the FIA happy either. And then being outspoken about the certain things you mentioned, Josh. Lance Stroll might not have been wrong about some of the things he said, but by saying those things, you kind of cast, Formula One FIA in a negative light, and they don't want you to be saying those things at all. Kind of like when Lewis Hamilton was talking about Andretti coming to Formula One. At first, he was like, "I think it'll be great," and then he tried to backtrack, and Hamilton was like, "Well, I just talking about the diversity of adding another team to the sport." So I guess Lewis was trying to smooth things over there. I don't know what the FIA will do to Lance Stroll. I think if anything, they might issue him a small monetary fine. I don't think his conduct rises to the level of suspending him for a race or anything like that. But considering everything we've seen with Lance Stroll, I'm not sure what his father Lawrence Stroll is going to do. I know a lot of people probably assume that Lance has a ride in Formula One as long as he wants, as long as his father's on the team. But if I'm Lawrence Stroll thinking about the future of Aston Martin, instead of thinking like a father first, I think it's important to think like a business owner in this case, and tell Lance we have a sports car program coming up. You can go race at Le Mans, you can go race at Daytona, Sebring, Petit Le Mans. You can have a great racing career in sports car racing, but we need to have this hard conversation. Be like, maybe it's time to move away from Formula One and go to the sports car racing program. And we already know Lance Stroll really likes sports car racing. So I think that would be a really good home for him if he decides to go down that route.
Yeah, I totally agree, Kobe, with basically everything you said there. I was going to bring this up in knots, but we brought it up. There'll be lots more F1 not from me to come shortly. Be warned. Wasn't a good look at all. You can't, to use a soccer analogy, you can't raise your hands to a player or a referee or even a teammate in this case. And Lance, he obviously thought he was out of the, maybe he thought, or in the heat of the moment, he was out of the vision of the TV cameras just behind the little wall at the back of the garage that jutted out there. But still, it's just not a good look. And then, as you said, the interview afterwards, and I think Josh, remember, you'll be more across this than me. Didn't he do a very similar interview at the end of Saturday qualifying as well?
Yes,
where
'cause
again
he was
he
out in Q1.
qualified fairly. Yeah, he fairly qualified right down the field. And to the business point of this, Aston Martin are battling for fourth in the Constructors' Championship. And you think back to the last time we were in Qatar, Fernando Alonso got on the podium in an Alpine, and he did a pretty decent job again this weekend, just missed out on the podium. But the team that they're fighting against absolutely, apart from Max, obviously, absolutely dominated the weekend. You can't have your second driver bumbling around in getting knocked out in Q1 and then costing himself, albeit it was only one World Championship point with a track limits penalty at the end. But that 1 point might end up being vital in a few weeks' time once we get out of Abu Dhabi. Who knows? But yeah, bringing the sport into disrepute is the phrase that comes to mind with Lance Stroll at the minute. And as you mentioned, oh look, his dad's just bought a sports car team. So hopefully Lance Stroll has got Ian James's number, because they can't continue with this. Surely, if he continues into next season, he won't get past the summer break if this is the form he's going to run with. If they can get rid of Nick De Vries at AlphaTauri for, not doing this badly against his teammate, then surely, as Adam says, Lance Stroll's time in F1 is done. Or if it isn't done, it's soon to be.
I brought it up during the commentary on the grid pre-race show that Alonso has scored 3 times as many points as Stroll this year, supposedly in the same car. And Joe said Stroll might lose 10th in the driver standings as well. You did bring it up on the grid pre-race show as well on Saturday, Joe. It's just shocking, absolutely shocking. And the McLarens, we'll get onto those later, have really come up. And Aston were the second fastest team at the start of the year. Now it's all gone wrong.